If you're married, you already know you're different.
Right.
You know,
Right.
You don't have to be really taught that.
Yeah.
But what do we do with it?
Yeah. 20 years ago, the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus came out to critical acclaim. John Gray was on Oprah. It was an amazing success. It got men and women talking. So the question today is, are men and women still actually different?
Yes. We are different. I mean, obviously we're different physically. That's pretty obvious. But we're also different in so many ways. I mean, our hormones are different. Our brains are different. The way we communicate is different. Our emotional needs are different.
The thing is different doesn't mean not able to do a lot of the same things. And I think that was where a lot of it came from, is we've really morphed away from the traditional roles.
And we think differently. We internalize things differently. How we hear information is different between a man and a woman.
They've actually done studies where they take children, or they take boys and girls at varying ages, and the girls, even at the age of 3, 4 years old, they're facing each other, they're playing with each other, and that follows all the way through life, where guys are, you know, doing parallel play. Little boys are doing parallel play. You know, they're not necessarily looking at each other in the eyes, you know, because that's actually from evolutionary perspective very threatening. If two men are looking at each other in the eyes, they better have they're either about ready to fight, or they have to be in a really good relationship.
In adult relationships, we're very different. We have different emotional needs. We have a different way of communicating. Like a primary emotional need for a woman is that of feeling cared for, feeling special. On the other hand, one major need for a man is to feel appreciated. A man wants to feel he can make a difference in his woman's life. All the things traditionally over hundreds of years that men did that had a purpose and a meaning, that made a woman feel appreciative of a man, are gone. And women and men are equal, but we're just different. So what men need now is more on that psychological, emotional, communicative level to feel important and significant and making a difference, even though a woman doesn't need a man like she did 100 years ago.
How do we navigate this? How do we acknowledge the differences and do better at relationships?
Well, I can speak as a couples counselor. A lot of it is education. You have to teach
the tools.
people to be aware of these things, and then people will see them very clearly. If you're married, you already know you're different.
Right.
You don't have to be really taught that, but what do we do with it?
Yeah.
And that's the education part. Like what are men's needs, women's needs? How do we communicate differently? One example is, generally speaking, a man has a rough day at the office or at work, and he comes home. He generally wants to go into his cave, and that just means he wants to be at peace and forget about what happened during the day, because a man reduces his stress by forgetting about it and not wanting to talk about it.
Which is completely counterintuitive.
Which is very different from what a woman will do.
So it's been 20 years since the book came out. Do you think it's sufficient? Do you think it needs a rewrite? Do you think it needs an add-on? Like, what do you guys think about this? Is it good enough for a tool to teach people?
I think it needs to be revisited in terms of the dramatic changes, the role changes that have happened in the last 20 years. I think it's a really good place to start, and I think that was one of the reasons why it was so successful, is because it didn't pit men versus women. It wasn't a you versus me, us versus them, but it actually did provide a means for talking, and I think that would be, you know, dialogue is always good, as long as men and women recognize that they don't talk to each other in the same way.
Yeah. So, gentlemen, what's the biggest misconception that women have about men?
Well, I honestly believe that men in relationships do want to be partners. And I think that role of how they see themselves in child rearing and being in a household is a shared responsibility. And I think that's really more the norm now than it has been ever in the history of those kind of relationships.
Just that we really are different, and to embrace the differences, and be clear on acknowledging that.
Ladies, what would you say the biggest misconception that men have about us?
There is value in emotion, and a lot of times what women feel is that the men devalue the fact that they have feelings and that they're acting from feelings as opposed to being very rational. So I think the acknowledgement that emotion and feelings do have a role.
a misconception that men have about women is that they want to control everything, that they want to be the boss, that they want to be in charge. And that's not necessarily true in aspects of a relationship.
So it sounds like all of us are in agreement that this book has made a major impact on how we approach relationships. And it also sounds like at the end of the day that there's a little bit of an update to it, that 20 years has gone by and we've got a lot more freedoms, and that makes things a heck of a lot more complicated. So if we start from the perspective of we're different, then perhaps it gives us a place to communicate and relationships will get better.